ESPN.com NFL Insider KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. A good Monday to you, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All is well. We had some interesting games. I mean, some really ugly games, but then some exciting games. A wild card weekend in the books, and it started off with, man, an Andy Reader. You call it. Your son calls it what? Tomlining. And we got we had the Andy Reader yesterday on Saturday. There. How do you blow that game?
You blow that game for a number of reasons, but the thing is that people say that the Chiefs didn't run the football in the second half because they, at one point, the ESPN has a win percentage rate that estimates what percentage you have to win the game based on where you are score-wise, where you are in the time in the game and all that. The Chiefs at one point had a 96% win chance, and even after it got close to 21-10, they were still at a 92% win chance. They got two possessions in a row, and they ran the ball 4 out of 6 plays. So they did try to run the football. It just didn't work, and part of that's because Tennessee's been really good against the run this year. I've got my good blocking yards per attempt metric. Tennessee's defense ranked first in good blocking yards per attempt allowed this year. So that's a defense that you're probably not going to get a lot of big plays against, and you got to lean on Alex Smith in that situation.
And they did try to lean on Alex Smith. I mean, they just tried to stop running the football up 18. They lost Kelce. How much do you think that affected the offense? Did we lose you, Casey? He vanished. He's not there. All right, we'll try to reconnect with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Because I said, it's 21-3 at that point, and Kelce goes out, and they didn't do anything. I mean, absolutely nothing. I understand that you got to run the ball in that situation, but, Casey, I thought it was compounded by the fact that Kelce went out of the game there. How much did he affect – how much was his absence affect that the Kansas City offense? It's
a huge impact because he's the all-around receiver. He's probably their best vertical threat. We talked last week about tight ends usually aren't the great vertical threats for the team. They can be like counterpunching with their vertical threats. He's probably the best overall vertical threat. Hill is a good stretch the field guy, run 9 routes. That's fine. He can do those things. But Kelce does those other things to stretch the defense in a different way. When he's not in there, now suddenly the defense says, look, all we got to do on Hill is stop the 9 route. And now we don't – Orson Charles doesn't scare us at tight end or Demetrius Harris. We're not scared of either of those guys. So now we can just concentrate on stopping the run. And it really says something for Kansas City that Kelce is that central to their offense. And again, Hill's a good receiver and a good player, and he's very productive. But they have to have another way to go about beating a team that just, if Kelce goes out, because too much of their offense is funneled through him.
Henry, monster game there. Mariota was okay, nothing special. What did Tennessee, what were they able to do to come back and overcome? Did you think that was more Tennessee, the way they played, or that Kansas City allowed them to take that game from them?
Yeah, Kansas City's rush defense is really – Kansas City's rush defense finished 29th this last season in my good blocking rate metric, so they're not a very good rush defense. They're 26th in another metric. I have good blocking productivity, so you can run the ball against them. The front seven doesn't get a pass rush at all either, so that's part of it. In fact, it says something that Mariota did. He had an okay game, but he did not do anywhere near as well as he should have against the defensive rank. He's not going to rush your passer in a way that makes you think that it's going to go badly. So kudos to Tennessee for doing that, but this is still one of those games that it's an Andy Reid loss, and it's Kansas City finding a way to blow a 96% win chance.
Saturday night, I liked Atlanta. I picked them to win the game outright, and it was experience that I thought was going to be the difference in that game, Casey. 26-13. They ran the ball. McVay and Gurley, they ran the ball, but not enough. 14 for 101. They got away from it, and I thought the moment was a little too big for the Rams.
Yeah, it's funny. People are pushing back online about how people are saying, oh, the Rams look like they were rattled, this, that, and the other, and saying, well, that's not so. Yeah, it is. Go look at the game. Go look at the game tape. This team, the entire team looked like the moment was too big for them. And usually you want to lean on metrics and things, and metrically they didn't perform particularly well, but this is a team that just the moment looked far too big for them. It's a scary thing down the road because some teams just don't handle that kind of pressure very well, and the Rams didn't. And I usually take that idea of, a team's going to come in there with a lot more experience. I usually kind of check that and say, yeah, okay, it's a playoff game, they'll step up. But Atlanta showed that made a difference.
With Atlanta, this is a team that you mentioned a lot on the show about changing the offensive coordinator. They lost the play caller. They went 3-3 to start, but they're now, 8 and I think they've won 8 out of 10 or 8 out of 11 down the stretch here after their 3-3 start. So it seems that they are their offense is kind of getting up to speed now with the new play caller.
I think they realize now that with the kind of system that they want to run, you come into the season and you have the type of offense you had last year, so explosive, can put up 30 points a game, and it takes a little bit for the team to realize and putting together its game plan that, okay, we don't have that this year. Sarkisian's just not going to be as creative as Kyle Shanahan, and we don't have that, so we have to adjust the way we run our offense, and we have to adjust the way we run our defense. The thing is, though, Atlanta, their defense doesn't get as much credit as you get. Everybody talks about Jones. They talk about all the offensive players there, Ryan and Freeman. But their defense finished 8th in my good blocking productivity rate allowed metric. So this is a team that can stop the run exceptionally well. That's going to bode well for them versus the team they have to face in the playoffs.
Yeah, can their defense keep it up? Over the last 8 weeks of the regular season, only 4 teams, New England, Minnesota, L.A. Chargers, and the Eagles allowed fewer points per game. A lot of people don't recognize that when talking about this Falcons team.
Yeah, and the people talk about their secondary, and their secondary's been very good too. Their secondary's done a superb job, and so that's a big plus for them. But this past week, in pass pressure rate, the number of times that you're going to get pass pressure rate in the quarterback, they got pass pressure rate on Goff 42.9% of the time. It was the highest of wild card weekends. So this team can also get after your passer. So it's another situation where Philadelphia or again Minnesota or New Orleans that they have to face the Falcons. Any of those teams are going to have to worry about getting the quarterback protected.
We'll obviously dive more into the Falcons and the Eagles on Friday's show with Casey, but just when you look at Atlanta with Matt Ryan, Freeman, Julio Jones, how do you initially, if you looked at all 3 teams play this weekend, I know we were wondering which is the best matchup, but after seeing the 3 teams play this weekend, is this the best case scenario for Philly that they got, that the 6th seed ended up winning? Because they are an underdog in this game.
Yeah, I still think it's the best case scenario for them. Minnesota is a better team. New Orleans is definitely a better team all around. Maybe, given the Rams that they got rattled by that situation, maybe they would have been a better team to face. But the Falcons still are not an explosive offense, and the Eagles are going to want to go in this game and say, all right, we want to keep this to make this a 20-17 game and hope we can get the 20. And that's what they're going to do and say, we've got the run defense to stop these guys, and we just need to make sure we don't let big plays to Julio. Those are the kinds of things they're going to think about. But if you're facing Minnesota, you're facing New Orleans, I think you're a little more worried about a 30-point game happening, because if 30 points happens for the other team, Philadelphia's not winning.
All right, Jacksonville 10, Buffalo 3, an ugly game, an ugly officiated game, an ugly played offensive game. But Jacksonville's defense, I mean, if they were going to make the run to the Super Bowl, if they're going to do that, we knew this was the kind of game they're going to win. But Bortles has to be better, but their defense was legit. Is that because they are that good? We know they're good, but are they that good, or is Buffalo just that inept offensively?
Buffalo allowed 4 sacks or more on 6 games this year. Only 2 teams allowed 4 or more sacks in a game this year than the Bills did. So Buffalo's offensive line is just not that good. The Bills, by the way, air yards per attempt, it's how an average distance downfield that you're throwing a pass. The Bills, their average air yards per attempt on a pass in that contest was 3.8 yards. That's the lowest in wild card weekend. That's terrible. You're not. I mean, you're not challenging the defense in any respect. If that's the case, you're throwing all dink and dunk passes. So I think that they're going to have a bigger challenge. But Jacksonville took the vertical game away and said, "You're just not going to throw deep because we had the receiver or we had the cornerback to stop your receivers."
I mean, obviously Buffalo all season long had challenges on the offensive side of the ball, but they just really couldn't get anything going. But there was a couple of coaching blunders by Buffalo in that game that they really, they could have. That game could have been different if it was coached a little bit better.
If you're trying to play, excuse me, I'm having a little bit of a cold here. If you're trying to play bully ball like the Bills are trying to play, if that's what you're trying to do, and you get down on the 1-yard line, 1st and goal, I might understand if it's 3rd and goal and you throw the fade. 1st and goal, you decide to throw the fade route to Benjamin, and you're going against Ramsey, one of the best corners, arguably the best cornerback. Like, why? Why are you doing this? Why? You've got big running backs, you've got an offensive line that nothing else can run block well. It doesn't pass block well, but they can run block well. Why in the world don't you do that? And you have a mobile quarterback too, or a guy you could sneak. That was just the biggest head scratcher of the day. That why in the world you would do that? Because if you get, they got the opportunity, the extra opportunity down close, and then they blow it because they didn't stick to the bully ball method. They said we're going to throw when we get down close, and that was foolish.
Yeah. In terms of Jacksonville, they beat Pittsburgh up the last time they played. Bortles had a good start to December, but he really struggled this game and down the stretch here. Can they win playoff games with this play at quarterback?
If Bortles
even with this defense?
It doesn't. No, if they played this badly, if Bortles plays as badly as he did, and that wasn't just it wasn't just that he was the stats weren't just bad. It was, hey, look, the guy is off target on 20.6 of his passes. That was the second highest rate this weekend. I mean, he's terrible. And most of his passes were check down passes. He only averaged 5.5 yards per attempt on downfield passes. I mean, this is not very good. You're not going to win if you do this. So Bortles has to play a whole lot better. And by the way, going to that Pittsburgh game, everybody talks about Jacksonville's pass rush. The team that led the NFL in sacks this year was Pittsburgh. So, Jacksonville allowed 42.6% of pass pressure rate this weekend. So it's something Bortles is going to have to worry about.
All right, KC Joyner here, 97.3 ESPN has all the games this weekend. Of course, the Eagles coverage begins Saturday at 2 o'clock. Let's look at Carolina and New Orleans. This was a fun game. Obviously, this game, too, had some coaching things and some refereeing things that we can get into. The refereeing this weekend was just abysmal. But Carolina took New Orleans' run game away, but Drew Brees still was able to show, hey, look, I might have been playing second banana this season to the run game, but if you need me, I'll be there.
Yeah, and that's a scary thing for the rest of the NFC. Mind you, if he does try to do it against Minnesota's defense, and you have him throwing a bunch of passes against that secondary, which is chock full of what I term red-rated players you don't want to throw at, and they're probably the best free safety in the league in Harrison Smith. You don't want to do those same things, but Minnesota's run defense hasn't been anywhere near as good this year, so I think that New Orleans is going to be able to run the ball. But the idea that if he had to get into that kind of situation, or if they get to the conference championship, they got to play Philly or Atlanta, and now Brees can throw the ball for 350, 400 yards if he needed to, that's a scary prospect.
What about the Saints' defense? That had been really the talk that, wow, their defense, no one's giving their defense enough credit. They didn't play they gave up 26. I thought Newton played a great game. So the Saints' defense showed a little bit of cracks.
They did. They only got pass rush pressure on 23.5% of plays, or 23.4% of plays, which is really second lowest of this wild card weekend. So the Panthers really got some good blocking there. And the Saints, though, the thing about the Saints is that if you look at their fourth quarter pass rush, according to our stats and information group, the Saints got pass rush pressure on 40% of dropbacks in the fourth quarter. And Bill Walsh always said the key to winning NFL games is to get a pass rush in the fourth quarter. So they stepped up when they needed to, and Cam Jordan should be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. So I think they'll be able to do better, but they only got that kind of pass rush against this offense that they really were able to should have been able to get a better pass rush against is kind of a concern.
And the one thing with New Orleans, too, the fact that they didn't run the ball very well, which is what they did well all season, and still were able to put out, 31 points in that game, shows you they can run it and throw it. They can beat you both ways there. So that matchup with Minnesota should be pretty interesting. So if you're Minnesota, do you like your matchup?
What I'm trying to do if I'm Minnesota is try and make sure that the game stays a low-scoring game. I want to play a low-scoring game. I want to try and make it a 2017 game. I want to make it a clock ball game because Minnesota's defense, as good as it's been this year, they rank 31st in good blocking rate allowed. Now, mind you, they're second in good blocking yards per attempt, so they don't give up a lot of big runs, but you can block their front seven and get them moved, and that's not something you want to do against New Orleans. So I think they want to do a lot of 10, 12-play drives, grind the clock down, and try and put Brees in the situation where he has to pass against that secondary because if Minnesota can't make Brees pass against that loaded secondary, I think it's going to be a big problem for the Saints or for the Vikings.
Yeah, no, and that one's interesting. So we got good NFC matchups. I mean, we talked about Philly being a underdog in the game, but last year they beat the Falcons by running the ball at them. They ran the ball for over 200 yards in the game against the Falcons last year. You saw Gurley got off to a good start running the ball. They kind of got away. And then I thought another interesting number, Casey, was Jay Ajayi this year for the Dolphins played against the Falcons and ran for 130 yards in that game. So it seems that if the Eagles go with the mindset of establishing the run, that could be a way that they can, instill their will on this Falcons team.
Yeah, they can, and they rank fourth in the league in good blocking productivity, which is GBP. It's a metric I have, measures overall rushing effectiveness. So they're fourth in the league in that category, the Philadelphia's offense is. And again, the Eagles' defenses, or the Falcons' defense was 19th in good blocking rate allowed. They're 8th in good blocking productivity. So, but you can get some big runs against them. And the thing is, that the Philadelphia's rush defense, they're first in good blocking rate allowed. This is a team that does not allow very many big running plays, and Atlanta's rush defense or offense should not be able to get the ball moving quite as much. Which the concern is if Atlanta knows we can't run the ball that effectively, we're going to start throwing against the secondary, which Philadelphia secondary shows up, because there have been times that the secondaries look great and there have been times it's looked terrible. And so if I'm Philadelphia, I almost want to invite Atlanta to run and hope I can keep the game low scoring.
Yeah, it should be interesting, because last year when they played them, Matt Ryan did not have a very good game. He was like 18 for 31. Julio Jones had a big game against him, but they did not run the ball very well in that game last year at Lincoln Financial Field. So there are your matchups. In the NFC, you got the Saints taking on the Vikings, the Eagles taking on the Falcons. Tennessee will play New England, and Jacksonville will take on Pittsburgh. So, again, the AFC matchups not all that enticing. We'll break those matchups down a little closer on Friday's show. The officiating was terrible, though, this weekend. I mean, you could go in every single game and pick out something that was really bad. It's a shame, Casey, that's a story seemingly every week in these playoffs.
It is, and the idea that, like, the 10-second runoff, I think it was in the Carolina game.
Holy mackerel, that was terrible.
I mean, just completely missed it, just totally missed it, and that they had to step in, and the announcers knew, wait, there should be a 10-second runoff. What's going on here? And that, announcers, unless it was John Madden over the years, none of the announcers usually knew the rules better than the referees. John Madden might, because that was what he did, but usually the announcers wouldn't. But in every game, an announcer is pointing out, hey, wait a minute, they're doing this thing wrong. That's a really bad sign. And I think the NFL needs to do is I think that's why they're trying to get the full-time officials, and they're trying to do things to make the officiating better, because I think they realize that badly officiated games, it's going to happen. These people are human. It's going to happen, but they need to do what they can to make those things not happen, and they need to make the replay system more user-friendly, almost like a college does, where unless it's just overwhelmingly evident that it was a mistake, just let the play on the call on the field stand, because this stuff with all this dinking and dunking on officiating and taking 20 minutes to look at a play, it really ruins the flow of the game.
All right, we'll break down all the games on Friday's show. KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash, appearing via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, pal. Feel better.
Appreciate it, man.